From folk music to music folks in 20th century China, a Christian hymn composer, a protest song composer, a soprano, and a musicologist. This is part of my Sinophone music history series, which is part of my global music history microlessons. A little bit of historical context. Since the 16th century, the Europeans had been present in China, uh, but the Portuguese who arrived in the 16th century were confined to Guangzhou and Macau. In the 19th century, this changed with intensified colonial presence. There were the two Opium Wars, and in the 19th century, there was intensified missionary activity with the publication of Christian hymnals. Around 1900, the Chinese government adopted Western military band music and public school songs, which were modeled after tunes used in 19th century US public school education, music education in public school. So sometimes audiences have some reservations about Chinese musicians who engage with Western sounds. So to kind of situate that, to contextualize that, we can refer to Sun Yat-sen, who was the founding father of China. He was actually Christian, and he studied English and British history in Hawaii and obtained US citizenship. Across East and Southeast Asia, Westernization has historically been the first step in decolonization. And in recent decades, we've seen de-Westernization efforts in Japan and Singapore, where there's a shift from 100% Western music education to include Asian musics. So the title of this microlesson, Folk Music to Music Folks, refers to an enlargement of the music genres that we talk about when we study music in China. Typically, the phrase Chinese music refers to folk or traditional music. And in this microlesson, I'm going to be talking about composers of Christian hymns, composers of composers who wrote in music genres that could be traced back to, that were influenced by the Christian hymns and Western military band music and US public school songs. The term folk is something that's discussed a lot in music studies. Here, I'll just state that I'm using the word folk to mean the same thing as traditional music. Folk music, when translated to Chinese, refers to a very large variety of Chinese musics, including Chinese opera and instrumental ensembles. The word folk in Chinese is translated as 民间. So who are these music folks? There are the composers of the famous Butterfly Lovers Violin Concerto, He Zhanhao and Chen Gang. There is Tang Dun, who graduated from the Central Conservatory in China. There is the composer Jia Guoping, who currently teaches at Central Conservatory. And then there are the case studies in this microlesson, who I will introduce, including Mao Zhongjie, who is a composer of Christian hymns, Liu Xue'an, who wrote nearly 100 protest songs against Japanese invasion of China in the 1930s, Huang Youkui, who's one of the four great sopranos of China. That's how they're referred to. And then there is Qian Renkang, who is the first doctoral advisor for musicology in China. So, as I mentioned earlier, there was increased colonial and missionary activity in China beginning in the 19th century. This meant that there was the teaching of four-part hymns in churches and schools in concession areas. These concession areas are areas of cities such as Shanghai, which were handed over to European colonial powers Basically, these areas were became foreign territories. This took place beginning in the 19th century. And under this colonial presence, hymnals were published. Um, Chinese words were set to Western tunes. The first hymnal was printed in 1818, and at least 34 hymnals were printed between 1838 and 1922. So the compositions of Mao Zedong represents a turn, a development where now we are talking about hymns that were actually written by Chinese composers. So one of the hymns written by Mao Zedong is called "Whenever I Think of You." This was written around 1929 to 1930. The lyrics are, "O Lord Jesus, whenever I think of you, there is a feeling of bliss in my heart. I fervently hope to meet you soon, so as to spend eternity with you. Lord, you are the balsam in the garden, the lily in the valley. You are the rose of Sharon. How can I desert you? Amen." This is the score for "Whenever I Think of You," and and the numbers here are a form of cipher notation that was popular and continues to be used in China. They were popular among music amateurs in 20th century China, and hymns, of course, are meant to be sung by non-professional musicians, by the congregation. So the cipher notation was popular for Christian hymns. Um, so uh, just very quickly, here the number one indicates the tonic, which is B flat. So this hymn is in B flat major. This is the time signature 3/4, and the numbers here indicate the scale tones of B flat major, and there are three beats in each measure. A dash here means a continuation of the third tone. So the third tone, which is D, lasts for 2 beats over here. And let's listen to, this is a piano rendition of the melody of "Whenever I Think of You." Our next case study is of Liu Xue'an, a composer of nearly 100 protest songs against Japanese invasion in the 1930s. Other the range of music that he wrote included war film songs, piano works, and military band songs. He taught at Shanghai Conservatory and other institutions, and he was the editor of the following music journals: War Songs, Music Journal, and Musical Monthly. So the first category of music that he wrote uh, is military songs, and he wrote the song for the Air Force, which is translated as "Ambition to the Sky." So a little bit of the historical context. Um, the Chinese military began westernizing and modernizing in the 19th century, and Western advisors were invited uh, to China. There was the adoption of Western arms, and also uh, Western music directors were invited over to China. Uh, the first military band was formed in China in 1895. Each battalion was to have a military band. Military bands became popular in schools, and they influenced the genre of school songs that were used in music education in Chinese public schools. These were known as 学堂 school songs, and 学堂 translates as basically school. And so this is Ambition to the Sky, the Air Force song. And as a comparison, I will also um, uh, play a short excerpt from John Philip Sousa's The Stars and Stripes Forever, which is the national march of the US. Okay, and now just a short excerpt from The Stars and Stripes Forever. If you'd like to listen to the entire recording for Ambition to the Sky, you can find the link in the description for this YouTube video. Another category of music that Liu Xue'an wrote is protest songs. These were written to protest Japanese invasion beginning in 1931 when Japan invaded northeast China. These protest songs were meant for mass singing by ordinary folks from all walks of life, and they actually grew out of the 学堂 school songs. One of the protest songs was written by Liu Xue'an is the Great Wall Ballad. This was originally a song for a war film, and then it was then adopted for protest song mass singing. We'll listen to a performance by the London Chinese Philharmonic Choir, and this is but note that this is of course a performance by a trained choir with ability in singing, and it's harmonized. Whereas in the original protest songs, it would have been just ordinary folks singing and probably just the melody. The third category of music that was written by Liu Xue'an is film songs. Um, these film songs were the later on became were influential in the popular music in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So one of the songs that Liu Xue'an wrote was "When Will You Come Again?" And this is actually a very famous love song, and um, here we'll just listen to a iconic version by the Taiwanese singer Teresa Teng, and this is the 1978 version. A little bit of a background about When Will You Come Again? This was written in 1936. So it was a love song for an advertisement for a film. Became very popular in China. And what happened was during the Cultural Revolution, someone else added so-called counter-revolutionary lyrics to the song because it was such a popular song to protest the Cultural Revolution. And Liu Xue'an was then branded as right-wing and he was imprisoned for 22 years. He was released 9 years after the end of the Cultural Revolution, by which time he had lost his eyesight in both eyes. And this is a short excerpt from When Will You Come Again? And if you want to listen to the entire song, you can follow the information in the description for this YouTube video. Our next case study is of Qian Renkang. Qian Renkang was the first doctoral advisor for musicology in China. In 1956, he taught at Shanghai Conservatory and was also the deputy editor-in-chief of Shanghai Music Press. In 1982, he became the chair in musicology at Shanghai Conservatory, and he was the director of the Music Research Institute at Shanghai Conservatory. He served as a committee member for national bodies such as the Chinese Federation of Literary and Art Circles and the Chinese Musicians Association. Qian Renkang's research publications included 22 books, such as Interpretation of Select Key Works of Tchaikovsky and Chopin's Ballads. He edited or contributed to 42 books and translated 25 books. He also deciphered the notation of ancient Chinese works, which is different from Western notation. He did that for 172 works, and one of the notable works was the compilation of songs known as the Bai Shi Dao Ren songs. These were songs written by the composer Bai Shi Dao Ren, and that's from the Song Dynasty. In addition to translating it to Western notation, Qian Renkang also composed piano accompaniment. Qian Renkang was also a journal editor for Music and Education and Music Criticism. He wrote several textbooks for higher education, music higher education, including textbooks for music analysis, music appreciation, Western music history, and he also wrote textbooks for high school music curricula. He received national music education awards. Qian Renkang was also a composer. He wrote music for the drama The Peach Garden, for the opera Song of the Earth, and he wrote over 800 songs, which included the art song compilations Star and Spring. The composer Gao Weijie said of Qian Renkang that Qian Renkang examined the music of different countries and peoples, avoiding a narrow Chinese nationalism without blindly worshipping foreign, that is, Western culture. He produced persuasive research within this comparative purview. That brings us to our final, more brief case study of one of the four great sopranos of China. That's how they were referred to in China. And this is Huang Youkui. So a little bit about her career. First about her biography. She grew up playing Chinese instruments such as the flute and the dulcimer, and she performed and studied piano works by Beethoven, and Chopin in secondary school. From 1930 to 33, she studied voice in the US. In the 1930s, she sang in La Traviata, Madame Butterfly, and Turandot. From 1933 onwards, she taught in music higher education in China, starting at Suzhou University, and then later on she taught at Shanghai Conservatory and Lansing Teachers College. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you for watching.